So I guess we can get going in a minute. Bill's going to be our instructor today. Bill Roesser from CoreLogic. You may or may not have seen him teach during our on-site classes. And I'll have Bill introduce himself. I have everybody muted, so if you wouldn't mind, because we're recording this, if you could use the chat, and I'll try to watch the chat for Bill and ask him questions as we go. That will work best. So otherwise, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name's Bill. I'm with CoreLogic in Buffalo. Today, we're just going to kind of look at the tax options you have available to you. The realist tax and also the public records option that's actually available right in Matrix. So, and as Jane says, she's watching the chat. If you have a question, just kind of jot it down. She'll take a look at it and then pass that on so we can all take a look at whatever the question's about. So you're getting more familiar with Matrix. Hopefully you're just kind of going through the menus and seeing everything that's available. And that's what I'll start with. I'll actually open up the public records option. So when you go to search, you have the option of searching by the different property types, things like that. You can find open house, find an agent, but also notice right here, you have public records. This has every taxable parcel in your area. It actually extends all the way from your area back to Western New York, up to the Thousand Islands, down to Cortland County. So you've got a good chunk of New York State that you can actually search, but of course you need what's happening locally. So I'll go ahead and click this. And what it does, it opens up the search screen that you could now use to find whomever or whatever you're looking for. So notice up here at the top left, you can search by any owner's name, first or last name. Over here, you can now break it down by an individual address, or I could type in just a street name and find everyone that lives on that particular street. Now, certain streets, if I were to search for Main Street right now, I'm going to get properties coming in from Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, everywhere that we actually have the database available to us. So in that case, you probably want to start narrowing it down by a county or a town or something that will get you closer to the main street that you happen to be looking for. All right, I'll delete this one out. Well, let me start with an address. Let's say we're looking for a property at 41 Maple that happens to be in Oneonta City. So just come, whoops, I accidentally hit my enter key there. Let's start that again. So we'll do search, public record, and I'll start with that 41 Maple Street. So right here, house number. Now here you can also put in a compass direction. When you're doing a search up in the, say, the shorthand speed bar up here, you wouldn't type in that compass direction. But here, if we were 41 North Maple, I could type in the north at that point. But in this case, it's just Maple. And that's all you need. Now down here, notice it's found 47 of them. So here's where you're going to need to narrow it down a little bit more. So I'll come down and I'll ask for the county of, I believe this is in, I think it's in Otsego. And notice I've now narrowed it down to just 2 records that match up. And of course, like when you're doing a search for listings, I can now go to a map, see where those 2 properties are located. So here we've got one in Cherry Valley, one down in Oneonta, and this is the one I'm really looking for. So I could actually identify the town too, to be a little more specific. Or I could actually use the map shape. Say I've got these popping up all over the place. I could actually take my drawing tool and just say, that's the one I want. And now that has been more specific, and that's all I'm going to find. Notice the other one in Cherry Valley just disappeared. Now I could go up to results. And here is that tax record. Now we've also got an indicator reaching back to the listings too, and that green bubble indicates that this is also currently an active listing on the ML system. We could get the property ID, we could see the address, and just location, owner's name, things like that. So you're getting a lot of additional information with this. As I move over, I can see assessed value, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, things like that. Now here, this one's interesting. For the bedrooms, the tax records is showing this to be a 5-bedroom property. The MLS listing has determined it to be a 4-bedroom. So not quite sure what's going on in that case. Maybe they took 2 smaller bedrooms, took down the wall, and now you have a larger one. but I would go by whatever the MLS listing is showing at this point. Same thing with bathrooms. Here we can see the tax record is showing this to be a 2-bath house, where the MLS is showing it to be 3. So there's things we don't quite know what's going on until we start looking at this listing. So that's just some of the basic information you're getting. If I scroll back to the left, I can now click on this property ID, and this will open up the information from this tax record. What are we not seeing in the tax records that we pull up from Matrix? We're not actually seeing the actual taxes paid. So for that, you're going to have to go out to whatever database is available to you to actually pull up the actual taxes. But we can see the owner's name, location, school district. Here we get this estimated value. This is something CoreLogic does. It's a business they deal in. It's actually used for banks and mortgage companies, but they're kind of giving us an idea of what the estimated value of this property is. Now, there's details that they're looking at nearby to help determine that. And sometimes the details are plenty, so we can get a pretty close estimate. Other times there's just not a lot of data to reach out and grab to come up with a closer price. But in this case, notice over here, we have something called a confidence score. If this is anywhere between 60 to 100, that indicates there's pretty good data that we can pull in to kind of get a pretty solid estimate of the values in this area. Now, if this is lower, say 50%, then it's harder to determine. There might be, so let's say this house is so unique in this area, it's hard to kind of peg a price because all the other houses are so much different than this one. If you're another example, let's say every house in the street was a starter 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath ranch, then you can pretty much predict what prices are going to be in that area. So you'd have a much higher confidence score in that case. And the difference there is showing to be about 12% lower and 12% higher. And that's where you're getting this estimated value range. So this is 12% lower or higher. This one's 12% lower. So it can show what could also be possibilities of prices for this area. Down here, notice we have some descriptions about what is the AVM, how is this confidence score arrived at, and just some of the information that's available that's being used to calculate this. All right, so down here, we also have tax information. So what's the section, lot, block, things like that. Assessment year, what were the assessments over the past several years, characteristics of this property. And then down here, building features. So some real basic stuff, but it does quickly identify who owns this property. Is it owner occupied, things like that. All right, so that was it. I'm going to go back a page. So here's where we started. What happens if we click the address? It actually takes us to a map, so we can now locate where this property is located, where Maple Street actually is. So anyways, that took a moment for it to paint the whole picture, but now we get the details of where this property is located. And like with any map that we offer, if you want, you can now reach up here and change that to a satellite view, just to get a little more detail about what was that big empty space we're seeing. Well, it looks like it's a park or school, who knows what. We can zoom in on that detail and just now kind of identify the location of that house, the rough size of that lot, things like that. One other thing you can do whenever looking at the maps in Matrix, maybe I'm curious, well, who owns this property next door? If I left click on it, it will actually now pull up the ownership of that property. So it looks like it's owned by Amianta Rentals Inc. And I could click the tax button here and it'll show me a little more detail about that property. But that will work for any parcel, you see, whether searching for listings or tax records. So how about the one across the street? Click on that. What I'm hoping there is good one. We can actually see there had been a listing that closed back in 2021. So I could pull up that listing, see the details of that property when it was on the market, and also get the tax records. But I'm also able to pull up the dimensions. Maybe the dimensions of the lots are important. So I could click on that and it will now spell that out. Sometimes you may know that the overlays, the parcels, may not be quite in line with the actual real parcel. In this case, it looks like it's pretty dead on, but sometimes you might see the line cutting through the edge of a garage for the next property or something. So in general, it's showing us what those parcels look like, but sometimes the overlays are not 100% lined up. All right, so that's just some of the detail you can get. Since this property had been on the market, we could also see there's a Google Street View, and we get to see what this area looks like and swing around and get some detail about that neighborhood. All right, so a lot of it is very similar to what you would see when pulling up a listing also. So that was it, and that was just through a basic search. I could go back to my criteria, looking very similar to a regular listing search, and put in additional things. Maybe I want to find everyone who lives on this Maple Street here. So what I could do is just delete out the house number. And now I've got 67 residents. And now I may have narrowed it down a little bit by drawing that circle earlier, but let's see what we get. I'll go to map again. And here I'll just kind of zoom in a little bit closer. So here is our Maple Street. So it's showing every resident on that street that actually has an address of Maple, and we can get some pretty good detail. Now, if I go up to results again, now I'm looking at the entire street. You could sort any one of these columns, however it might be helpful to you. Maybe I could sort it by sale date or by square feet or whatever might be something I'm looking to determine. But again, we've got all the owners' names here. If you don't see all the owner's name spelled out here, I could actually expand this frame a little bit, just so I can now identify that's owned by Megan and Jamie here. All right, but some interesting detail that you can now pull up. It's breaking out by zip code, things like that. And then, of course, I can scroll over and see additional details. Here's one thing too about the tax records and the number of bedrooms. Let's see if I can find one here that might identify this. Let's go to the next page. I'm looking to see how they're spelling out the number of bathrooms here. Well, some of these bathrooms are all over the place as far as numbers. Like here it says it's tax record says it's a 3-bathroom house. I'm also showing it as 1. What happened to those other 2 bathrooms? You know, I'd have to look into this, see why some of these numbers are so out of whack, so to speak. So this one is showing the number of bedrooms as being 6, and MLS listing shows it's only a 2-bedroom house. All right, so anyways, we'll have to look at that and maybe get a little more detail. But you are pulling up a lot of information that may be of help to you. Number of acres, number of stories, things like that you're built. Now, like with Matrix, you can add or remove columns that might be of interest to you. Maybe I'm needing to know, well, were any of these in foreclosure? So if I don't see that particular field, I would have to open up each and every one of these tax records to get that information. But here's the other option you can do. I could come up here and notice too, if I click on any, let me do it for, let's say, sale price. If I click on that label, it will now alphabetize or numerically sort that column. So these currently have not sold, so I can pull it up. But if I click a second time, it will now put the sale prices at the top. So it's going ascending or descending, depending on how many times I've clicked that. But that's helpful to know you can sort any column. But if you want to add a new column, maybe I'm interested in seeing, I'm looking for a foreclosure indicator. Are any of these on foreclosure now? I could actually find an empty space next to one of the labels. And when you left click right there, it now allows you to first remove the column you're in, or I could insert a brand new column of my choosing. I'll click on insert column. And here I'm going to just come down and search by foreclosure. Right there. So here we can see foreclosure active, auction date, case number, things like that. So anything to do with a foreclosures, you can now search for and actually have that showing up. Maybe I'm looking for the posted date. Click on this, click apply. And now if there is a foreclosure, I can now see when that was posted. So we do have one property that does appear to be on foreclosure now. Now I have to scroll down and it's forcing me to now go to a second page. Okay, I'll go to the second page, look at Now I have to go to a third page. For me, that's just kind of tedious. I hate having to keep going page by page by page. I would like the ability to just scroll through the entire group. So up here, notice, just like when looking at listings, I can change the lines per page that's available to me. I'm going to click on this where it says 25. And in the Realist system, the max that you can show is only 50. So I'll click on 50. And now I'll be able to scroll through, but I only have to scroll through 2 pages at least. So it does kind of speed up that process a little bit. What if I want to save that? I want that to be locked in that way. So up here, notice this little gear, and this will be on listings pages, whatever. When you see that gear, by clicking on it, it will now allow you to lock in what you set. Well, I've already set a sort. I sorted it by recording date or sale price. And I also have changed the count per page. Now, if I had also set up a different display, I could save that. But by clicking here, whatever changes I made, I'll click right now, are now locked in. So every time I do a search, it will be sorted by sale price, and it will show me 50 lines per page. So just a way to customize the screen so you can quickly get to what you want to see. All right, so that's it. And we pulled up everyone that lives on this particular street. Let me show you another way of searching too. Let's go back to criteria. So I can always change that sort I need. What if I wanted to search by more than one address? Remember, initially I typed in, what was it? It's 41 Maple. What if I need to search by yet another address, maybe further down the street? I only have one field to fill in one address, but notice this more button. By clicking this will open up a total of 10 input fields where I can now put in unique individual addresses and then pull each of them up in a group. So things like that will be helpful if you need to look for multiple addresses or multiple streets. All right. Notice I've got county up here. I could add in Shenango and Delaware if I need to. And you could even save these too. Maybe every time I do search, I am typically searching for one of these 3 counties. So I'll delete this out here. And let's say I do want to have all these counties available each time I do a search. So I'll do Delaware here. And I'll do Shenango. All right. So just like when you're searching for listings, I can now save the information that I want to have available to me quickly in the tax system too. So how would I do that? Well, I'd come up here, click on the gear. Now here I'm in the search field. And when I click on the little gear, it allows me to now set the search criteria that I always want there when I first start the search. So I'll click on that. And now I've ensured that these 3 counties will always be locked in. So maybe when I come in, typically, if it were that main street again, I'm going to get main streets from those 3 counties, but it would be easy to now come through and just say, you know what, in this case, I'm only looking for what's happening in Delaware County. So I was able to change that quickly on the initial search. And then when I exit out and come back in, it will put the 3 counties in again. So at least it's just clicking out and deleting a couple that I previously used. But I'll always have the list there to narrow it down quickly. All right, but notice you have the ability to now search by sale date, sale price, that AVM estimate. I don't really know how you'd use that, but it's an available to you. And like before, if I needed additional fields, I could now come down here and say, you know what, I am looking for the additional field like that foreclosure date that we had. All right, so it's a basic search, and you've gotten familiar with it when using Matrix to find listings, and it works basically the same way when looking for tax records. All right, let me show you another search that might be something that you could start with. I'll go back and start a brand new public record search. So it gives me a clean screen. Notice I've already got these counties in there. And in this case, I'm looking for, I want to start with a map, and I'm looking in the town of Norwich. I guess it's a town or a city. So you can also search by map. So I could use map up here, or I could use map here. They will both take me to the map. All right, I'm going to get rid of this little dot. Oh, I had previously saved that too. I forgot that circle is in there. I'll delete that shape. And then I'll get into the town of Norwich. Maybe if you're looking at this map too, you can kind of tell me where am I. I thought it was up here somewhere. Oh, here we are. There's Norwich. I'll kind of drill down to that. Gives us a town here. And I like the map view. It's just a cleaner look. And let's say I'm looking in this area and I'm trying to determine what's going on with a certain area. Maybe I've just sold a house on that particular street. And I want to come down here and actually identify who lives there. And I want to create a mailing list to maybe send out a flyer saying, I just sold the house in your neighborhood, whatever the case is. But in this case, I'm looking at this area and I'd like to find all the residents that live in this area bounded by Elm Street and Locust. So again, I could use one of my drawing tools here. I could use this one, the rectangle. And I'll just say, let's come down here. Let's go over to Elm Street here. And I'm making sure it goes over far enough to the right where I'm actually touching those parcels that are on the right side of Elm Street. Now, maybe I missed a couple up here. I can grab hold of that line here with a little dot, and I'll grab hold of that handle and drag it up just a little bit more. All right, so I've also maybe picked up a couple of these. You have to at least have highlighted a certain percentage of the other lots for that to finally identify you're looking for those. All right, so here's the available residents nearby, and I want to send out a flyer, but I want to kind of curate the group here and say, I'm looking just for a target market that I'm trying to send to. What if they just purchased a house last week? I don't want to send out a flyer that I'm a realtor in the area. What if they're not even an owner-occupied property? What if they're rentals? No, I don't want to send anything to them either. So I can come back up to the criteria here, and I could actually identify over here. Let's look for just owner-occupied properties in that neighborhood. Notice right now I've got 149 properties or residents. I'll come up here. I'll say owner-occupied. Let's just send to the owners. I'm now down to 94, so I lost about 50 properties there. Is anyone on the do not mail list? If they are, I cannot legally send them anything. So I'm going to check this little box here. And I didn't lose anyone. It's rare that you do, maybe occasionally one or two. And then the next thing, I want to make sure that I'm sending out to those that have maybe been living there a fair amount of time, let's say 5 years or longer. They would be more my candidates if someone may be thinking about listing or selling their house. So I'm going to go back to a date. Let's go back 5 years. So I'll use April 1st. I'm just typing in 4. Oops, I'll try to type in 4/1/2018. So that's about 5 years back. And I'm going to type a minus at that point. So the minus is now saying, let's go back to 2018 and let's go further back in time. So the minus is saying, let's go to the older residents. And now I have 56 residents that are living there that have been living there at least 5 years. They're owner occupied and are not on do not mail list. So from here, I can now go back up to my map, see where those residents are living. And then over here, I can actually get the results and pull up kind of the detail I need. And what detail am I looking for? I want to create mailing labels. I've got their names, their addresses, a lot of detail about their house. When did they sell? What did they purchase it for? So now, at this point, I want to use those names here and send out a flyer. So first of all, one thing, notice these little bubbles here. This indicates the red is showing that they're sold. Here we've got an expired property, and you'll start to see these different color codes that we're using. Here we've got some kind of distress situation, and that actually is a short sale there. So that is being recorded as well. And then I'll scroll down, and one thing I'm looking for is I want to make sure I don't have any little green bubbles. If it's green, that indicates that it's currently an active listing for some other agent. I would not want to send a flyer if that's the case. So I'll make sure I don't have any of those. Remember, we got a second page. Let's go back that second page too and just double check that one. Okay, so I've got some expireds, but none of them are green. So I'm good to go. I want to grab the entire list here. Now, if I were to click up here and just click this top little button here, what happened is I only grabbed 50 of the available 56 tax records, because 50 is the page size that I have. If I want to get something from that other page, what I need to now do is come over here and click on all. So this is now going to ensure that I'm grabbing all the listings from all the pages. All right. So now I've got all 56. And what are we going to do? We're going to create mailing labels. Well, actually, I could even export this data too. So I could actually drop it into another file and make use of it and pull out just the fields I need. Or I could even customize this display to have just the fields that I will be using. But for now, I'm going to create a mailing label. So I'll come down here, click on print. And because I'm creating labels, first of all, it wants to print the tax grid, which we just saw, and that's fine. I could print that out, but I want to print out a mailing label. I did pull up those that we know the owner's name and the address. So probably this would be the best label to use. And it's called the owner and property address. Now, right below it, you see owner and tax address. That's indicating that they're receiving the taxes in a different location. Maybe, who knows, maybe they're snowbirds and most of the time they get their mail down in Florida or something like that. So, but in this case, I'll say, let's use the property address. They're probably having the mail forwarded anyways. So, and by the way, notice the label. We're using an Avery 5160 or equivalent. That's the most commonly used address label size. So I could go to Staples and ask them for a 5160 label, and they'll give me their brand of that same size label. All right, so here I'm going to click on this. That's the one I'm going to use. And then down here, I could actually start to print, but by clicking print to PDF, it's going to give me a preview first. So I get an idea of how they're going to be formatted on these labels. So, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's some kind of company name or whatever. So, but here we can now see how these are labels are being formatted. This format is actually 3 rows of 10. So we got a total of 30 labels. And on the next page, we got the next group. And that's how they're going to print out. So all I have to do now is actually click my print button and it'll be sent through. And by the way, because this is a PDF document, there's your print button up there at the top. And I got something else in the way here. Let me move that. So right there, there's your print button. All right, questions on that? You've got this huge database. I mean, you can make use of it in different ways, but in this case, it's actually going to help me just to maybe reach out and contact a certain part of the town. Now, your company may offer something along the lines of this, but if they don't, you've got the available database right here. All right, so that's it. One other thing, before I even leave this for good, let me go back a page. Let's close the labels here. Let's say this is something that I keep targeting this one section of the city, maybe every half year or quarterly, whatever. I can now send out the same flyer, at least pull up that group of residents there. I could actually save the search so that in a quarter's time, I can now reach back and send out the same flyer. Save all the detail. I mean, why have to do that over and over each time? So what I could do now is go back to my results. And down here, just like you could a search that you do for listings, I could come down here and now save this tax search. I'll click on it and I'll create a new save search. Now, this is going to be my, I don't know, whatever it is. It's a Norwich sale flyer or something. And I could then put in the date that I next want to do this. I'll do next. And I'll put in the date that would take me back another 5 years. So I could say, let's do this again in, what is it? April, May, June, July. I'll do July 1st. So that will now, I'll have something that's going to remind me to now do this in July 1st. And the only thing I would have to do the next time I run this would be to extend that days back option that I use for this last sale date. So I want to change that back to another 5 years back so that I'm now looking to see, have any of those residents moved, or are they now falling into that range where they've been living there 5 years or longer? Because maybe I hadn't identified them the first time I did this flyer. And then I always want this on the home page. So it's going to remind me every time I look at my home page. I'll just save here. And now when I go back home, down here under my favorite searches, I've got my know which flyer, and it's telling me to remember to do that on July 1st. So it's got all the detail. All I have to do is run it, change the date from going backwards in time for the sale, and then I've got my labels again. So just an option you could use with the tax records. All right, so that's that. Oh, by the way, whenever you create something like this, let's say you no longer need it. That's areas fallen out of favor with me. I'm now looking at other areas of the city, and maybe I just need to get rid of this. So what I could do is come over here to manage. And by clicking on this, it will now allow me to delete that particular search that I've saved. Or I could go into settings and actually see how I saved it, things like that. Or I could change the criteria. So right here, it's like, why should I even have to do it on July 1st? I can set the dates that I want in there now. And then when I finally run it, it'll be all set to generate the labels that will be necessary on July 1st. All right, but in this case, I will delete it. Are you sure? We'll say okay. All right, so now if I go back home, that search is no longer part of my saved searches here. By the way, you can only save up to 20 searches in this particular field here. So it is limited space, but I mean, maybe you're only using it on a temporary basis where you save it for a while and then you delete it out. All right, so that's basically what you get with the property search. So if I hover over search, I have this public record, and it's a great way to now find anyone who happens to live in that area. Maybe you just want to kind of look at the assessment of all the properties on your street. You could now take that to the assessor's office and dispute that. All right, so that's one search. Let me show you the realist option here. In fact, let me pull up a listing. Hopefully I've got an old listing here. So when I pull up a listing and just click on it, it gives me all the details, but you may have noticed this option called tax here, or realist tax. When I click on it, it's now going to take me to the realist tax record, which is slightly different than what you see in the public record tax data report. And here's what we're getting here. You'll notice a slightly different way it displays the information. It's kind of nice. It gives you the pictures, some clear information up here at the top. And like before, get the owner information, location, tax, assessment, characteristics, features. But notice we're starting to get a couple new features popping up here. We've got a sales score indicator. So in this neighborhood, it's showing that sales are not real robust. The neighborhood's not turning over a lot. Down here, we can see the estimated value again. Now notice our confidence score, it's at rock bottom. At that point, it's anyone's guess what this house might sell for. Maybe the neighborhood is just kind of run down or whatever. So it's hard to determine what prices may be there. And then we get some to listing information. So now we can see past listings for this property. So we're getting a lot more detail when we pull up the realist tax record. Past market sales, mortgage history, foreclosure information. So if I pulled up one of those properties that were identified as being in foreclosure, we would see the date that they were served and things like that. So detail that might be helpful to you. And we also have a property map. So now we can see the size of it. We can see its location, things like that. So open up both tax records just to see what you do get. Now, what if I wanted to print this? You know what? There's certain information I want to print out for my use or maybe for someone else. So I could even email it. But when you do print from Realist, I'll click this here. It gives me a quick print, which will print all those pages I just scrolled through. There's stuff there that may not be of importance to me or whoever I'm sending it to. So in that case, I could come down here and do a custom print. And in this case, it allows me to now select what do I really want to email out and print. So let's say in this case, I only want the property detail. I'll turn off these other features and then proceed and either print or email that out. So that's what you get when you see this print and option here. Now, notice customize view here. I can now identify what features do I actually want to start seeing on that page when I go through that whole display. So you can change it around. I could change the order of it. Maybe I want to see the cell score up a little bit higher. So I can now actually move those around, clear the selection, change them. But that's what you're now seeing here. And you may find certain things I just don't even really care about. So turn it off. And then one other thing too, when we start looking at the information that pops up from the Realist tax record, this may just kind of declutter the screen a little bit. Notice here it says fixed, show all available attributes. So the attribute would be like the indication if there's a fireplace. Okay. But if there's no fireplace and it did print out fireplace next to it, I don't see any number. Maybe I don't need those. Anything that didn't have a number of something like a, let's say there's no garage. Well, I don't want to see the line that says garage if there is none. Maybe same thing with fireplace or anything else where there be no information for that particular descriptive line there. Instead, I could come over here and click on what's called dynamic. So if there is no fireplace, there's no longer a label that says fireplace, and next to it, nothing would show up. So basically, for this one, I'll see all these labels and half of them may be blank because there was no feature that matched up. But for this one, the labels themselves will disappear if there's nothing to describe for a fireplace or a garage or whatever. So it's, I don't know, it's up to you if that's really an issue. It may shorten your printout slightly just because I'm weeding out a lot of the fields where there was no information to identify for that particular field. So play around with it, see if it's something that affects you. Probably not. But if you see that, that's what that's pretty much identifying. All right, so I'll go back a page here. Let's close this. And I'm back at this record again. So here's what we had clicked to actually begin this process. We clicked on tax. Now, what do we have with this one? Realist tax map. By clicking it, it will show us the Realist map. Now, in this case, we're actually now opening up the Realist system. So you may notice it's taken a moment and it actually now took us into the Realist tax database. And here's that property. All right. So but I just want to show you how it's now going to open it up, and I could click on this and actually get the detail of this property here. I could get the photos, if any. All right. I guess no photos. There it goes. So it is pulling up stuff from properties that had been listed, and we still have the detail there, but you're also getting some of the other information. Or I could use these arrows here. What are they trying to show us in this picture? That picture. All right. So I could print the photos if I want, but we can now walk through each of those photos for that property. We can see there's some kind of indicator here. So this is currently pending. So we are getting additional detail. And by clicking on the address itself, it's now going to open up that tax record again. And we've seen this before. As long as I got the tax record open, notice here we're looking at the property details, which we've seen, but next to it, we can now pull up comparables. So it's going to look for other properties that have sold within some range. Now, it looks like I've only got one here. If I want to, I could actually go and actually change the range that I'm actually looking for. In this case, I could also look at a split view. So this is giving me the listing or the tax records and the map. If I go just to map, now I'm focusing on that. If I go to list, now I'm just looking at the listings that were found. Summary statistics. Let's see what I'm going to get here. Apparently, there's not much of summary statistics that can be generated. Okay, well, let me head back here. We also have market trends. If you like charts and graphs, this is kind of fun. It's going to kind of look at the comparison between the county, the zip code, and the town now. We've got some scales here. They're showing different things as far as close sales, median sales, things like that, the range, stuff like that. And then down here, we can now see these graphs. And here we're looking at just the, I guess, just the zip code versus the county. And they're pretty much in lockstep. or sometimes the zip code may be selling a lot more than the county or vice versa. But over time, we can now see the county sales and the zip code sales too. Now here it's breaking it down by median sale price. There may not have been enough sales to really generate much of a graph though. I've only got one listing here, or one tax record, but it is looking at the general activity throughout the time frame. So sometimes maybe one of those graphs may help you prove a point or just give you an idea of what's going on between the zip code and the county, or sometimes what do I say? These, whatever that difference is there, the city, the county, and the zip code. All right, and then neighbors. The neighbors is going to pull up a certain number of properties that are contiguous to this property or give on the street here. And these things can actually be changed so you can be a little more specific. One want to see more neighbors or less of them, but it is pulling up those properties that are nearby. And in this case, we can see these were past listings. And we're now getting the pictures from these, and I could scroll across and see the other properties that are contiguous to this property and what they look like, what they sold for. So that's what the neighbors is doing, just showing you who's real close by this one property. Neighborhood profile, interesting stuff here. This is a lot of census type data. So we can see population growth, number of households with children, things like that. So it helps you kind of target a market possibly. So it looks like there's a lot of younger people in this neighborhood. And that's a lot of times this part of the scale kind of spikes, but here we got a lot more younger people. Who knows? This could be a college town here. So there's a lot of rentals and there's just a lot of younger people. Male to female, single, married, all that good stuff. Housing, what's the median home sale price? Annual residential turnover. So this is kind of part of that sales score too. How many of these are rentals versus occupied? Fair market rentals. And then we can see what the locals do for livelihood, blue collar and white collar, income levels, ranges. And then we also have some commute times, temperatures, things like that, that I guess it's nice to know the temperatures, but everyone drives to work. There's not too much public transportation, let's say. And then education levels. So it's going to show the education levels of the residents. Now here it's looking at a specific zip code. So it kind of gives you an idea of what's happening in your little niche markets that you deal with. And then it looks at schools. It has a ranking. So we're using some national ranking option to show what the school qualities are, and then local businesses. So that's what you get with the neighborhood profile. We have an assessor's map. How am I doing on time here? I don't have much time. I'm not going to open that. It just will show you a very densely packed map of the streets, the boundary lines, the things like that. So it's just going to be, it looks like a schematic for electronics or something. Flood map. Now click on this and we'll see if there's any flooding that may affect the sale or the ownership of properties here. Now, I'm not as crazy about this flood map as we get in Matrix. For me, it's just not as intuitive because we got the A zone, the V zone, the D zone, and for me, it just doesn't make much sense. But we can see we got some colors, and that's where we're going to deal with flooding here. All right. But yeah, the Matrix maps are much more intuitive and they actually identify, well, that's a 100-year floodway. Here's a 100-year floodplain. Here's a part that's levee protected or protected by a berm of some sort. So, but obviously we got some flooding going on here. Now there's this hazards and risks. This is an add-on that you can purchase. So you'd have to unlock it and there is a charge for that. But if you're interested, maybe take a look at it. Tell you the truth, I haven't, yeah.
Now that you've shown all the tabs here,
Right.
we had a comment from somebody when you came here, you clicked on the realist map
Right.
icon in Matrix. And the comment was that when they click on that, often they're getting a message that says invalid county code. I think a lot of the mapping on the properties they have isn't quite right. And a lot of their listings needed to be edited.
Okay,
But did you have any further comment on that? We have been telling people to fix their properties. But if it's a sold property, only the board can fix it. So do you have anything further to add on that? Just if they're getting invalid county code?
I've never seen that, so I'm not sure. I mean, were the counties put in correctly to begin with or not? Is that why
Yeah,
that's
I think
showing
they
up?
were. I really think it has to do with the coordinate,
Original?
like mapping coordinates themselves, but
Okay,
feel free to, send examples over to the board. She says none of the realist buttons are working on the listings, property report map or neighborhood. So
well, I've
we'll have to, maybe Jill, send an example or two of that when you come across it, because when Bill clicked it today, it worked.
and I've
But
signed in as an agent in your
yeah,
area,
he's just
so,
signed in as one of us, and maybe we can narrow that down.
right. Huh,
Thanks,
interesting.
Bill.
Sure. Let me go back here. I do want to show one other thing. When I first did a search, now I brought this over from my listing, but I could also go in and do a quick search. So once I get into my realist tax, it allows me to do a quick search, which affords me the ability to search by an address, owner's name, ML listing, or the tax ID number. So quick in that I only have 4 fields to deal with here. Oh, one other thing too, let me show you this. I'm going to change county. So in this case, you'll probably want to start setting up counties that are important to you. So I'd be coming over here and say, you know what, I want Shenango, I want Delaware, and I want Otsego here. And then I can come down and apply those. So now every time I do a search, it's basically looking at the counties that I need to have available to me. So it's just, we'll streamline the process slightly when you do the search for, say, Maple Street. Well, those are looking in Otsego County. But notice here, you also have what's called My Search. I'll click on this one. And this one allows me a lot more fields. So I've got bedrooms, bathrooms, zip code, building square feet, zoning, whatever would be important to me, I can have a field available for it. Now, this is a pre-designed search that's already available here. And notice up here, if I click here, I've got some other searches that I can now quickly open up. So each one is arranged slightly different as far as the search fields go, and it may give me more of what I'm looking for. What if I want to create my own custom search? Let's say every time I go in here, the first thing I want to see is, let's say I'd really like to see address as the first field. That's typically what I'm searching for. So I can come up here and actually customize my search. And once I customize it, I could save it. So that's the one that always opens up for me. So I'll click on Customize Search. And it allows me to now grab what category I want to see. And here they are over here. So you'll be able to rearrange the order of these. So if I'm always looking for that foreclosure information, I could drag that feature up to the top. Let's say the first thing I want to see is address. So I'll check this. I now have address, but unfortunately, it dropped to the bottom of the available fields. I want this up at the top. So I can highlight this. I'll just click on it, and I'm going to hold down the mouse button, and I can now rearrange the order of these fields. I want address at the top. And then maybe next I'm looking for square feet. I think that's probably already in here. So here's building square feet. So I can rearrange this stuff, put it in the order that's going to help me best. And then once I'm done, come down here and actually save this. Well, let's say apply it first. So now I've pretty much locked that in. And here's my new search, and I could then save it. Notice address and building square feet is now up at the top. I like that. I'm going to save it. And I can even give it a new name. I'll call it My Search. You can put a detail about what makes it unique or whatever. And then I'll click Save. So I now have a new custom display here called My Search. So that might be my go-to search that I use every time. And like anything, you could type in the address of the town or zip code, whatever it is you need to now focus on the area that you're looking for. Let's do Maple again. Now this is probably going to give me a lot because I'm looking at the 3 counties. So here they are. Notice we're getting the little color indicators identifying that's sold, that's expired, that's an active listing. Here we've got some kind of tax indicator. As I hover over it, it's telling me that's actually a house that's been sold back to the public from the bank. But we may have others here. I got this little turquoise one. So that's currently a bank-owned property. So different things will pop up that may help you determine what's going on in your particular neighborhoods. And we got pre-foreclosure indicator. Now, one other thing you can do too is we have something called premium maps. It's kind of cool for the overlays that you now get, but notice up here, it's actually giving me a warning saying, select only one county for premium map layers. Currently, I have 3 of them set up. So it's telling me, go up here to change county, and I'm going to get rid of a couple of these. So I'll get rid of the Shenango and Delaware. So now I just have one. Let's apply that. And now I can actually use these premium map layers. And what you get when you do this, you have the ability to now open up what map layer do you want to look at. Maybe I'm looking at a certain area and I want to know, well, what portion of these residents are actually owner-occupied properties. Well, down here, I could say, let's grab the owner-occupied map layer. And I'll say, let's look at yes. First of all, I probably need a map to open up here. So let's up here, go to just the map. Right now, I'm looking at the list. I could open up the split, and I'll see this, or I could go up to map here, and I'll get just the map. Now, I remember I had a large county. Let's kind of narrow it down to just Amianta. So you do have to be a certain level to get some of this detail. And right now, I said, let's look at those that are owner occupied. I checked on, and all these green ones are currently the owner occupied. All the rest of these probably are rentals. So let's do that. I'll turn off owner occupied, yes. I'll turn on owner occupied, no. And we can see the portion of these that are not owner occupied. So I'm guessing, again, this is probably college community, and a lot of these properties are rentals. So some interesting detail you can pull up with these premium maps just to kind of get a handle on what's going on in this particular neighborhood. Now, other options you have here, building type, land use codes, home equity amounts, last sale price, sales score. Maybe let's look at the sales score and see how maybe often these are turning over. I'll click on sales score and let's look for those that are low. I'm guessing that's probably what I'll get. So all these are in that low category. So the properties are not turning over real quickly here. Let's go into the moderate. Didn't get any changes there. And I'm sure the high is not going to be available either. All right. So I just want to point some of these out. They're kind of fun in what they do to identify. We could look at mortgage ages. Maybe we're seeing a lot of owners are now pretty much at the end of their mortgages. Look at this and let's look for those that are 15 to 20 years. And again, we'll get some kind of overlay here. Let's go 5 to 10. Really? Okay, so when we go 0 to 5, it looks like a lot of these are pretty much ready to wrap up their mortgage. Anything that's 30, oops, I went too far out. So that's what you're getting with the premium maps that you see. And then very quickly, let me go through this too. Up here, I have the ability to draw on a map and just identify the area that I want, just like you would when you're using a search. And then the layers are important, and then I can now see the flood zones. I can pull up what zip code or where are the high school borders. So here I can pull up the school boundary, check on that, and it will now identify where in the Amianta city. Maybe I'm looking for the high schools, and it'll further divide those larger areas into the individual high schools. I'm trying to zoom out. It's not letting me zoom out right now. I seem to have frozen here. All right, let's turn these off. You also have these pins that will now quickly help us identify, well, where are those foreclosed properties? So I could click on this, and right here I'll say, let's look at the distressed properties, and I'm looking at pre-foreclosures. And when I click on this right there, one popped up there, got another one down here. So it is showing us, there we go, now I can move the map. So we can see those that are foreclosed. If I opened up that record, we would see some of the detail about when they were served, how long it's been in effect and things like that. Now, one other thing too, when I clicked on that feature and I turned on something new, notice down here it says 3 of 6 selected. Now you can only have a total of 6 overlays turned on at any given time. So if I were to try to max this out, I'll turn on this one. Now I've got 4 of 6, 5 of 6, 6 of 6, and I want to turn on the bank-owned properties. As soon as I do that, it won't let me do it because I've maxed out with the total number of overlays I've selected. So you may have to go through and turn some of these off. Oh, excuse me. So just kind of go through the tax displays and start clicking some of these buttons. I mean, something like this will give us the nearby points of interest. Maybe we're looking for, well, where's the nearest fire station or the nearest bank or something like that. We can get driving directions. I can put one address to another and it'll show me the distance that we take as the bird flies or crow. We could measure on the map. And then here, if you had to identify something, maybe I'm going to print this map out for someone looking at some detail. I could actually put a little kind of a word balloon on there. So by clicking this, I can now come down and identify this property here that we're trying to show as foreclosed. And let's close this, come on and do it. There we go. There we go. And then I could say, here's 123 Maple Street, or you are here, whatever the case is. So we can now identify what we're trying to show on the map that might be cluttered. And then that could also be printed out or emailed. I can clear all these overlays. It just gets kind of messy. And watch when I clear all. I also lost the parcels of anything you might want to see automatically on the map. One of them would probably be the parcels. So I would say always have the parcels turned on, which is located here under boundaries. I think parcel is a good thing to see every time you look at a map, whether it's listings or tax records. So it helps us identify what's going on. All right, so that's just some of the information you can play around with the Realist system, but it's interesting what you can pull up with it.
So Bill, we're just about out of time.
Yeah.
Bill has a cold.
Yeah.
And just to review with everybody, you can use public records in Matrix anytime. It's the same exact records that are in Realist, but in Realist you have really extra tabs and maybe some extras that you may or may not need. The assessor's maps are big, of course, for the appraisers. But you know, one of them probably feels more comfortable to you, and work with whichever works best, I guess, would be our advice. Anything to end with, Bill?
Well, and like you say, I mean, that was the original use when we moved all the tax records from Realist and then put them into Matrix. It just made it a lot easier for searching for ownership. And that's typically what everyone was doing. You just need to find out, well, who owns this property, whatever. So the database is shared between the Realist system and the search. And this is just so much easier to possibly search by. So when I go to public records, I've got a quick way to pull up that particular address or owner's name. But Realist does give you more bells and whistles that you could use to maybe identify like the owner occupied portion of the map that we're looking at. So they both do the same thing. Basically, it allows you to find a location, who owns the property, but one gives you a little more flexibility or maybe ease of use, I would say, in this one here. All right. And then when you, one other thing too, what am I doing that time? Let's write down the mark. Let's say I was going to pull up a past listing here or a tax record. Let's pull up that Maple Street again that I'd done earlier. Right here. I have that one. There it is.
There you go.
Name like Maple. let's say we're looking at this property. One unique thing that's been added recently to the tax search when you do it, or pulling up any listing on the ML system. As soon as I pull up that old listing or the tax record, notice this feature up here called View Comparable Properties. By clicking this, it will now go out and it'll find 20 comps that are similar to this property. So when I click on it, no comparables found for this property, really? That's unusual. Let's try another search here. Try this one. I haven't tried that yet in the area. Here we go. So for this one address, 25 Locust Street, it now has gone out and it's found 25 comps that are very similar to this. And notice it's breaking it down by status. So we can see which ones are currently active, what has closed temporarily off the market. And this will also pull up properties that did not go through an MLS listing. So you'll be able to see the just the tax record information for that sale. Maybe it was an estate sale or something. So it does go out and quickly show you properties that are similar to this. Although down here, and when you can go down to find more comparables, it does seem to be a little too generous, I think, in some of the fields that's using. Like here, we're looking for square foot that's between 1,038 to 2,400. So if I were doing a CMA, I would think that'd be a little too excessive for looking at similar properties. Maybe I'm looking for just a one bath house. Now it's going to 1 to 2 bathhouses here. So in this case, you have to kind of tweak it a little bit just to get down to the comps that would probably be more suitable for whatever property you're comparing with. But it is interesting. And if I were to pull up an old listing here, let's just hopefully I can find one here. I think I'm still on tax record here, but yeah, I'm still on the tax record, but you can pull up any property and you'll see that same button at the top of the property when you pull it up. So with this house, let's go out and find 20 good comps for it. I would still say probably the old CMA function is the best way to do a CMA, but just remember you have that one button up here.
So Bill, maybe next week we'll do CMA. We hadn't really settled on a topic yet.
Okay.
And we're going to be meeting on Wednesdays. Sometimes Bill will be here, sometimes not. I think we have him next Wednesday.
Yes.
If I'm not incorrect. And maybe that's the topic we'll do. Stay tuned for details. We'll post that on your Matrix news when we double check our schedule here and make sure if Bill's going to be here or not. Otherwise, we're planning to do this on Wednesdays for a couple months. Variety of topics. You've got a lot of new tools available. So I think we'll just say thank you for attending and wish everybody well.
Yeah,
Supposed to be
thanks a lot,
a
everyone.
nice day. Thanks, Bill.
Great. Thanks, Jane. We'll see you later.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye now.